This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. 4 people were arrested Wednesday in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood in Brooklyn after gathering in support of Carmella Charrington, a resident fighting eviction from her longtime family home. Supporters gathered in front of a brownstone on Jefferson Avenue as marshals arrived to carry out the eviction. When they couldn't get through, police were called. Brooklyn Councilmember Chi Ossé was among those police arrested. He was wrestled to the ground and handcuffed as protesters chanted, "Who do you serve? Who do you protect?" Homeowner Carmella Charrington and local housing advocates say the sale of her property to investors in 2024 was a form of deed theft, a criminal practice where predatory speculators use forgery, deceit, or fraud to illegally transfer ownership on paper and sell properties without the knowledge or full understanding of rightful owners. Bedford-Stuyvesant is a rapidly gentrifying, historically black neighborhood where elderly homeowners are often targeted by speculators. From 2014 to 2023, officials reported 1,500 complaints of deed theft in Brooklyn alone. The new owners of the brownstone, 227 Group LLC, call the allegations of deed theft unequivocally false, pointing to the decisions of 2 New York State judges and the conclusion of the Attorney General's office, which called it a complex property dispute rather than deed theft. But advocates for Ms. Charrington, including New York City Councilmember Ossé, say residents should not be evicted until all legal avenues have been exhausted. He's calling for a moratorium on evictions in cases where deed theft is suspected. Just this morning, Mayor Zohran Mamdani established the Office of Deed Theft Prevention, saying, quote, "The theft of a home is the theft of a family's future." For more, we are joined by New York City Councilmember Chi Ossé in New York. Thanks so much for being with us. Can you start off by talking about why you were arrested and why you were there in Bed-Stuy this week?
Well, first and foremost, good morning, Amy. Thank you so much for having me on. When I got a call from my constituent, Ms. Charrington, she called in panic. Their marshals were at her door. She's a grandmother. There was a 7-month child that was in the house. As a council member and also as a human being, I found it to be my responsibility to show up and see how I could support, at least delay the eviction of her and her family. When I arrived on the scene, there were marshals, there were police officers. A crowd began to grow. More officers arrived at the scene. I tried to talk to the marshal to see if we could buy some time, engaged in multiple conversations with Ms. Charrington and her lawyer to see if we could present a stay on evictions. When the marshal started moving in my soul, I could not let that take place. I could not see a family, a black family within Bed-Stuy removed from a home. So I stood in front of the house. The marshal, several officers, approached me, attempted to arrest me, body slammed me on the ground, cuffed me, and brought me into a police vehicle, which drove me to the local precinct.
And Councilman, could you talk about this whole issue of deed theft and the role of conservators and this particular group, 227 Group LLC, which has bought so far 119 properties in Black and Latino neighborhoods?
Absolutely. So as we see neighborhoods like Bed-Stuy, Southeast Queens, Harlem become more desirable in the eyes of real estate companies and real estate brokers, we're seeing a rise in deed theft across our communities. Deed theft is basically the practice of stealing one's home through paper, using fraudulent schemes of forging signatures, or using even family members members as a means to steal or occupy one's home to then sell it for millions of dollars. Again, as these properties are becoming more expensive, as more folks, white folks, are moving into these neighborhoods, these homes are seen as more desirable and lucrative for these real estate institutions, and that's why deed theft has been rising. That's why communities like mine have not only been seeing rampant displacement and gentrification, but also an attack on homeowners to force them out of their homes.
And could you talk as well about a particular Brooklyn attorney, 68-year-old Sanford Solney, who was convicted last year of 13 counts of third-degree criminal possession of stolen property? He was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for stealing 11 deeds. What's the significance of his case?
Well, first and foremost, 2.5 years is not nearly enough that someone should be convicted for stealing multiple homes within New York City, or anywhere for that fact. He is just one of the many examples of those who are participating in deed theft. There have only been, a couple folks who have been held accountable and been brought to justice, but there are more deed thieves who are out there. Many of these schemes are complicated and complex, which is why some of these cases take so long to process, and why some of these individuals and deed thieves who are participating in deed theft are not brought to justice for some time. He is just one of the many who we are advocating to lock up. These are individuals who are participating in violent evictions of homeowners, and we saw an example of that taking place a couple days ago.
And Chi Ossé, your response to Mayor Zohran Mamdani today establishing the Office of Deed Theft Prevention, saying, quote, the theft of a home is the theft of a family's future. What exactly will this mean? What kind of resources are going to be put into this office?
Absolutely. So before I endorsed Zohran as mayor last year, I had a conversation with him and his team, multiple conversations with him and his team about how important deed theft was to me and my constituency. He made a pledge on the campaign trail to make an investment in opening a mayor's office to prevent deed theft, and today he's fulfilling that promise. And we've been working with his office over the past couple of weeks of what this office would look like. Generally, it will circumvent communication between the various different city agencies through the state attorney general's office, as well as different district attorneys' offices, and making sure that we're not only preventing deed theft and doing educational campaigns for homeowners alike who are worried about how they could be victims of deed theft, but we'll also be providing them with resources on how to defend against deed theft, looking into how we could hire experienced attorneys who could fight back against these cases. A lot of the cases that we see when it comes to deed theft and when victims come to our office, there's a passing of the buck of who's responsible for holding these deed thieves accountable. This office will circumvent all of that communication and making sure that we are addressing the root cause of this problem and identifying who can truly enforce and prevent deed theft from taking place within our communities.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.